dorks.
Hello everyone and welcome to the CommanDorks. I'm Tarren.
I'm Beef, and we're back with another Deck Tech video.
This time we're going to try out something a little different to appease the algorithm gods and split our normal Deck Tech video into two videos.
Somebody cast Doubling Season during our last live stream, so now we have to do two Deck Techs instead of one.
Yeah, sorry about that. In this video, I will be discussing my Grixis wheel deck, one wheel to rule them all, with Sauron the Dark Lord lurking menacingly in the command zone.
What's he doing?
He's just standing there, menacingly!
This video is paired with Beef's Simic Partners deck with Thrasios Triton Hero and Kodama of the East Tree. Be sure to give this video a like and go check out that one right after this one. Also, help the channel out and hit that subscribe button. Now, with all that said, let's get this wheel rolling.
Boo!
The game is changed. I see it in the library. I see it with the hand sizes. I see it in the graveyard. Much that once was is lost, for none now have the cards they once did. It began with the printing of the wheel spells. Some were given to the color red, fleeting, fast, and most aggro of all colors. Others to the color black, the magic color of removal, rituals, and drain. And the most egregious of wheels were gifted to the color blue, which above all else desires value and card advantage. For within these wheels was bound the strength and the will to disrupt players' hands. But all of these Grixis colors were deceived, for another wheel was made. Deep in the land of Hasbro, in the universe's Beyond development team, was forged the card Sauron the Dark Lord. And into this commander card they poured their cruelty, their malice, and their will to dominate all power creep across the commander format. One wheel to rule them all. So, silliness aside, this is a Grixis Wheels deck. So unlike Beef, who is going to be piloting a deck with colors he hates, I'm actually piloting my favorite color combo in Magic. So I'm really excited because I'm a longtime Grixis fanboy. Praise be Nicky B. May he rest in his prison. But yeah, so this deck though, Sauron, the main goal I am trying to accomplish here is really just overall breaking parity in some way or another when it comes to wheel effects or wheel spells. I run a lot of pieces that are meant to reward me when I draw or discard cards and punish my opponents when they draw or discard cards. And when it comes down to it, my main game plan here is trying to drain and burn my opponents down to 0 life. So yeah, getting into Commander, Sauron the Dark Lord. So he's the new one from the Lord of the Rings set, obviously. So he is a Grixis commander, 3 generic, blue, black, red. He is a 7/6 Avatar Horror. Who has built-in protection with Ward, sacrifice a legendary artifact or legendary creature. It's a fairly tall order when it comes to wanting to spot remove him. Whenever an opponent casts a spell, amass Orcs 1. Whenever an army you control deals combat damage to a player, the ring tempts you. And then whenever the ring tempts you, you may discard your hand. If you do, draw 4 cards. Hence the wheel effect kind of built into him. But yeah, Sauron is a spooky guy. He's a big body with built-in protection, poses a potential threat of being a 3-turn clock for commander damage, and over time he is giving me a large threat on the board with the Orc army as my opponents keep casting spells over and over. All of that is fine and dandy, but it's really kind of just the icing on the cake here. What I'm really after is his last ability, saying that anytime the ring tempts me, I get to do a mini self-wheel effect. But Sauron is not really integral for the deck to function or to win. He's kind of a distraction from the true evil that this deck is trying to muster. He's, like in the books and movies, he's meant to be more of a presence that's lurking in the background, stoking fear into the hearts of my opponents while they watch their precious hands get discarded away. So, But yeah, so moving into key pieces in the deck, there's about 8 pieces I've considered pretty essential to my win strategy. So all of these are meant to really capitalize on wheel effects. So first on the list, Bloodchief Ascension, just a really good early game piece. I'm fairly reliably able to ping my opponents every turn, so it's going to help tick up the quest counters, and when it is online, having the 3 quest counters, it's just, draining each opponent 2 life whenever a card goes in their graveyard, and the life gain can be pretty relevant too, and, so with a wheel effect is, quite a bit, potentially. Liliana's Caress is another early game enchantment that's meant to just drain my opponents for 2 life anytime they discard a card. Orcish Bowmasters is a crazy ping machine that not only can serve to remove creatures and planeswalker threats, but also helps progress my overall game plan by helping burn out my opponents and makes an orc army to boot. So really, really good card. Glinthorn Buccaneer. Another just really good ping machine that rewards me for discarding my own cards. Fel Spectre is pretty similar to Liliana's Caress, just a creature equivalent to that. The CMC is a bit high, but the fact that it's a creature is good for being able to makes it easier to recur. Sheoldred the Apocalypse, probably the most dangerous inclusion as far as my key pieces are concerned. If my opponents see this in play, they would be wise to remove it, because there's a good chance I'm going to wheel, and that's a lot of life lost as a result for them. And a lot of life gain for me. So good one for them to remove. I'm sure Beef will try to steal it with his shenanigans. So
fingers crossed.
Spiteful Visions is a sort of miniature Nekusar effect that's also going to hurt me whenever I draw. But if a wheel effect resolves, the nice thing about it, though, is I can order all of those triggers going on the stack at the same time. So I can choose all of my opponent's damage triggers to resolve before my own, which could be relevant if we're at the late game stage and everybody's low on life. If I order all of my opponents to resolve first, mine don't need to resolve if all my opponents are gone. So still, I think, worth throwing in for that. Nekusar, like I just mentioned, he's kind of a backup commander in a sense. He does kind of everything the deck wants to be doing, hurting my opponents for drawing and letting me draw without any consequence. Psychosis Crawler, potentially the second most dangerous piece next to Sheoldred, because I have a couple of ways in the deck to double my own draw effects. And then, Consecrated Sphinx alongside this guy is knucking futs, as they say. And then Sir Conrad the Grim is a pretty decent inclusion, but sometimes it's easy to miss some of his triggers just because there's like 3 different things that he can trigger on. So sometimes just got to keep on top of catching those. But yeah, those are the key pieces. Synergies and combos in the deck. It's not, aside from the typical wheel stuff, it's not like very combo-y, but there are a few things here. So Bone Miser, along with Witch King of Angmar, or any other sort of discard effect like wheels, can lead into some potentially goofy, crazy plays. Mount Doom, along with a few legendary artifacts I run, is good for just a board wipe, and just, thematically, if I sacrifice the One Ring to activate its board wipe ability, is just on theme. Tarian's...
That's flavor.
Oh yeah, flavor. There's a lot in here that's very, very flavor focused too. That's the other thing. So Tarian's Journal's transformation activation, doing that in response to one of my own wheel spells on the stack. So I'm going to discard the cards anyway, so might as well try to get that to transform. Sensei's Divining Top, along with Reforge the Soul, if I'm able to reorder the cards, the top three cards in my library to get the miracle effect of that. Something kind of dirty, Cyclonic Rift or Evacuation during an opponent's end step, and then following it up with a wheel spell, like everything they just bounced is just going to the graveyard anyway. Is a nice little dirty thing to do. Phyrexian Reclamation, along with the Balrog of Moria, is a repeatable rampant draw because I cycle the Balrog and then just bring it back to hand with Phyrexian Reclamation, rinse and repeat. And Waste Not or Bone Miser along with any wheel spell, just great. Just ramp. So roughly 11 or so ramp pieces for mana rocks. I mean, Grixis, you are pretty reliant on mana rocks to generate mana. Not a lot of tutor land effects that are around for those colors. So I've got Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Talisman of Dominance, Talisman of Indulgence, and Thought Vessel to get a no max hand size. And then other ramp effects aside from mana rocks are a couple rituals. We've got Cabal Ritual, which has Threshold, which is very relevant in the deck because I am more than likely going to have 7 or more cards in my graveyard with enough wheels in the circulation. Jeska's Will. There's a good chance my opponents are going to have a decent hand size if I'm helping them draw too, so pretty reliable to get that full 7 mana or more from that. Dockside Extortionist, just because I'm running red, gotta throw him in, and there's a lot of recursion in this deck, so he's very worth throwing in for that reason too, to get the ETB effects more than once potentially. Nightscape Familiar, just a really good Grixis ramp dork, sort of a dork. Ancient Tomb, just another way to try and accelerate into maybe getting Sauron out there faster. Urza's Saga is in the deck for a few reasons. So there's 3 1-drop artifacts, a Soul Ring, Sensei's Divining Top, and a Library of Leng. And it also counts as an enchantment in the graveyard for Mazzolanti, the Great Door. And then finally, Mines of Moria is somewhat of a backup ramp piece on a land, because there's going to be a ton of cards in my graveyard to exile with that ability. So, yeah. Those are the ramp pieces in the deck. So, card draw. Now, this is card draw not counting the wheel effects. So, the wheel effects are a whole other category. So, these are things that are pretty meant to capitalize on wheel effects or are just different from that draw-wise. So, I have Sensei's Divining Top. Basically increases your hand size by activating its ability so you can order what you need. Call of the Ring is kind of a 2-drop Phyrexian Arena that requires you to have a creature, and synergizes really well with Sauron because he's going to let me do that mini wheel whenever the ring tempts me. Fairy Mastermind is just a really good thing to have out there when I'm doing wheel effects, because then instead of drawing 7, I'm going to draw 10 effectively, since my opponents are also drawing. And it does have that ability to force everybody to draw a card as well, which could be relevant. Geth's Grimoire. Oh boy, if that have that in play and get a wheel effect to resolve, whoo. Whenever an opponent discards a card, I'm drawing a card with that in play. So, Starving Revenant is a newer one. Has an ETB ability that lets me surveil 2, and if I keep either of them on top, I draw them but lose 3 life for each one I draw. And then he has a Descend ability where whenever I draw a card, target opponent is gonna take or lose a life and I gain a life. So not quite as good as the ones that affect everybody like Nekusar, but the life gain I think is well worth putting him in here for. Teferi's Ageless Insight to double my card draws outside of my draw for turn draw step. And then Alhemerit's Archive serves a similar function and also doubles my life gain. So, those two things combined with wheels, whew. Drawing 7? Nah, I'm going to draw 14. And then, of course, the One Ring is in the deck. Does it need to be in the deck? I mean, functionality-wise, but thematically, yeah, it's staying in the deck. And then I mentioned earlier Nekusar, the Mind Razor, helps me draw. And again, another one I mentioned before, Spiteful Visions. And yes, I am also running Consecrated Sphinx. So if Beef and I get both of ours in play,
I'm gonna steal yours. I'm gonna steal yours.
Man, yeah, you can have 2 Consecrated Sphinx, and everybody's just gonna cry.
Are you preparing for the possibility of decking yourself, sir?
Oh yeah, I mean that's why Library of Lang is potentially in the deck, because every time I discard, I'm just gonna throw it back on top.
Back to the top.
Yep. So
Makes sense.
that's one way I can save myself there. But yeah, I have considered throwing Labman in the deck, but it's tough to find room sometimes. But it is on my radar to potentially throw in.
I mean, you're obviously focused a lot more on my draw and discard effects are going to ping my opponents to death,
right?
Instead of I'm just trying to get through my deck as quickly as I can.
Yeah. Yep.
Kind of method. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, obviously you're running Nekusar, and in a lot of ways, this classic Nekusar kind of build. It's doing a lot of things that Nekusar does.
Exactly.
But it's well themed to Sauron, so I'm enjoying it. It's great.
Moving to multi-purpose stuff. So, I originally when I first built the deck, I had a couple counter spells, and then I took them all out, and then I threw a couple back in. One of them I threw back in was Arcane Denial, just because it's forcing my opponent. Well, not forcing; it is a May ability, but giving them the chance to draw 2 cards while I draw an extra card, and there's likely going to be something there that's punishing them for doing that. So, I thought that was a natural fit and potential protection for Sauron too. Waste Not. I love this card. I pulled this card a while back when the Core Set 2014 dropped, and I got a foil of it too. So, it's good. It's insane.
Now that's the card that was designed by Magic players, right?
Yep. It's one of the I forget what it's called. There's like
designed by the Magic community. It says it right on the card. Too.
Yes.
Yep. Your deck.
Yeah. It's 1/1 black. Whenever an opponent discards a creature card, create a 2/2 black zombie creature token. Whenever an opponent discards a land card, add 2 black. And whenever an opponent discards a non-creature, non-land card, draw a card. So, 3 opponents, if each of them is drawing even like 2 or discarding 2 cards, like that's a ton of value, ton of value from that. So yeah, it's very sought after for me to get that card in play. And then
too many things for me to steal.
Yeah, I mean, you might be going for enchantments of mine instead.
There's just too many things for me to even have a chance to steal enough. I think you're going to be doing just fine, even no matter what I steal.
It'll be a matter of, can I pull off enough of my own value instead of you? It's going to be interesting. Matsalantli, the Great Door, and then the backside being the core. So the artifact side is just a repeatable loot draw effect. Though the transform is a little tricky to pull off, but the payoff is bonkers, because the land side has an ability called Fathomless Descent. So you tap it, add X mana of any one color, where X is the number of permanent cards in your graveyard. I'm going to very likely have a lot of cards in my graveyard, and there are a lot of permanents in this deck. So yeah, it could be potential, adding 10 mana from one land if I manage to pull that off. Problem is, I do have to tap it to transform, so I have to wait at least 1 turn cycle in order to benefit from it. So, but still.
And I see you are running 4 different permanent types, so you specifically have those 4. You have to get a creature, an artifact,
another
an
reason,
and a land.
Urza's Saga is good because it's an enchantment land, and there's couple other things like that too. Yep. Relic of Sauron is a 4-drop mana rock that adds 2 colors among Grixis colors, but it also provides the option for a loot draw effect where you draw 2 and discard a card. Surly Badgersaur is basically removal and ramp whenever it sees me discard. Or if I'm discarding a creature, it's going to buff itself up to play into the fighting effect if I discard a non-creature, non-land. So. And then I mentioned earlier Bone Miser, not quite as crazy as Waste Not, because it's just my own discards, but when it comes to wheel spells, still a solid inclusion, I think, and the fact that it's a creature makes it a little easier to recur than Waste Not. And then I mentioned earlier too, the Balrog of Moria. It's just a ramp and draw effect, and if I manage to play it, if it dies, I get to exile 3 of my opponent's creatures. So, yeah. Removal. So got about 12 or so cards that I've called out as removal. So these first 4 I've mentioned already, Orcish Bowmasters, Surly Badgersaur, Balrog of Moria, and Arcane Denial. But other ones include Bajuka Bog. I mean, I always like to consider Graveyard Hate removal because denying that added value is, I think, just as good sometimes. Especially if I am making people, discard tons of cards and filling their bins. Depending on the deck strategy, I might want to get rid of one of those graveyards. So, Mount Doom has that board wipe ability where I have to sacrifice a legendary artifact. There's 4 legendary artifacts in the deck. An offer you can't refuse, kind of on theme, because, Sauron, he's made a lot of tempting offers to certain characters in the story and in the lore. I also run Cyclonic Rift, Feast of Sanity. Whenever I discard a card, it's going to deal a damage to any target. So, and I gain a life too. One Ring to Rule Them All is a saga where it has the first temp where the ring tempts me, and each player mills cards equal to my ring bearer's power. And then the second step is destroy all non-legendary creatures, and the third step is each opponent loses 1 life for each creature card in that player's graveyard, which, filling the bins with discard effects via wheel can be a decent amount over time. And it also, furthermore, the enchantment sacks itself after the third step, so that's an enchantment in my bin to help feed into Matzalantli the Great Door's transformation. Oh man, Archfiend of Ifnir. This one's very mean, potentially. Alongside a wheel spell, it's potentially a one-sided creature board wipe. The last game I played with this the other night was pretty damn oppressive for my opponent's board states. They just felt like they couldn't do anything because it's like, oh, he's just going to wheel again and everything I just cast is going away. So, yeah. And then Evacuation to bounce all creatures. Recursion. There's a lot of recursion in this deck. I imagine I don't think I need to say why. So I've got Takanuma, Abandoned Mire, which is that one of those channel lands that's going to let me mill 3 cards and put a creature back to my hand. Phyrexian Reclamation, just pay colorless and black, pay 2 life, and then put a creature from graveyard back to my hand. Reanimate, nothing better than doing a couple wheels, drawing into a Reanimate, and then getting some crazy value creature back for 1 mana, like Consecrated Sphinx, for instance. Recall. Oh yeah, I discovered this one recently because I was looking for ways that I can recur enchantments in Grixis, and there's not a ton, but this card, Recall, it's basically blue Bala Ged. The only catch is it requires me to discard at least 1 card by paying 1 for both X costs. But it's like, I want to be doing that anyway in a lot of cases. So, great for recurring things that Grixis has a hard time doing, mostly enchantments and lands. Yeah, I like it.
That's cool.
Tarian's Journal. So this one's great. If I'm lucky enough to have some sack fodder lying around, it's a great repeatable draw effect for that. Otherwise, if I throw a wheel effect on the stack and hold priority, I can activate its second ability in response to discard my hand and transform it, and then just let the wheel resolve, discarding, nothing that I already have. Yeah, and then the backside is a land that's going to let me tap to be able to cast a creature from my graveyard. So, and then I'm also running Underworld Breach, just a good late game way to reuse some of the things in my graveyard that I've cycled through. I also have Agadim's Awakening, just a good one to bring back the likes of Dockside Extortionist or Shieldred or Glinthorn Buccaneer. And then I also have a proxy, because this is an expensive card for real, but Yawgmoth's Will. It's basically the OG Underworld Breach, but in black instead. Another great way in the late game to be able to open my entire graveyard as a toolbox and hopefully find a way to clinch victory from whatever is in there. That's the idea, anyway. And finally, Lear, Disciple of the Drowned, because he's in here because most of my wheel effects are sorceries. So having the ability to give all of those in my graveyard flashback is perfect. Also, he provides a little bit of stack protection, making it difficult for anyone to, stop my wheel spells from resolving. So, those are all my recursion effects. This is one of the downsides of the deck. I don't have a ton of protection. So I do have those 2 counter spells, An Offer You Can't Refuse and Arcane Denial. And I have, just like I just said, Lear provides a little bit of stack protection. And then Sauron the Dark Lord has some self-protection with Ward. And then the Witch King of Angmar, if I discard a card to activate his ability, he gives himself indestructible. Utility cards, so these are ways to just kind of support that overall strategy. This one not so much actually. Barad-dûr. I'm not really playing into the Amass theme at all, but it's there in case, if I don't have anything better to do with my mana, I can find a way to pump up my Orc army, potentially. So it's there. Cephalid Colosseum is a land that has Threshold, and if I have Threshold, I can activate it to... Threshold says, pay a blue, tap and sack it. Target player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards from their hand. So, yeah, it's basically a mini wheel on a land. Had to include that in here. Oh, yeah, I also have Gaia Reach Sanitarium, which is sort of another backup means of forcing players to do a loot draw. Library of Lang, damn near a key piece, I'd almost say. It can save me from decking myself by discarding cards to the top of my library and gives me no max hand size, so really good. Oh boy, Dauthi Voidwalker. If he's in play to see a wheel effect resolve, that is a lot of options at my disposal. Oh boy. So you're not the only one that's going to be stealing stuff potentially, Beef. If I get to do that, woo, fun times.
So I see.
Yeah. Oh boy, and I also have Gollum. Yes, precious. He's basically a great sack fodder piece to trigger the Ring Tempts You, but he's also just a good card to pitch to the graveyard, because he can recur himself by sacking a Foolish Hobbitses that stays on the board. And Witch King of Angmar is a disincentive for my opponents to attack me, as they'll end up sacrificing anything that's going to deal combat damage to me. And on top of that, he has an activated ability that functions as a discard outlet, and gives himself self-protection. Oh yeah, and the Ring Tempts You whenever an opponent hits me. So, and finally, this one, Sire of Insanity, because sometimes it's just about sending a message. it's Sire of Insanity with things like Waste Not, or just, oh man, I love, I don't think I've ever been able to play it, but I love the idea of just seeing what happens with that out there. Yeah. Mana base here. Just, I have your 3 shock lands, check lands, turn 3 lands, fetch lands to help, again, have another permanent type in the graveyard. Urborg, Tomb of Yawgmoth for mana fixing. Other fixing lands like Command Tower, City of Brass, Mana Confluence, Reflecting Pool, and then the Xander's Lounge to fetch with said fetch lands. And Reliquary Tower, of course, if I'm getting a ton of cards, I want to maintain no max hand size. All right, last section, all the wheel effects. So when looking over the various wheel effects out there, I was really trying to prioritize those that specifically discard along with the draw. Because, there's a ton of things in here that really want to see discard. So one of these is Burning Inquiry. Just a 1-drop, or not drop, a 1 mana red spell. Each player draws 3 cards, then discards 3 cards at random. Dark Deal is another one, where each player discards all the cards in his or her hand, and then draws that many cards, -1. This is a really spicy one to play if I have a draw doubler out there, like Teferi's Aegis Insight, because it's really going to hurt my opponents a lot more than me in those cases. Jace, a couple creature-based ones, Jace's Archivist and Magus of the Wheel, both have abilities, activated abilities to draw. I also have Runehorn Hellkite, which it has an activated ability from the graveyard So he's another thing that's just perfect to discard because I can. He's just a wheel effect that's waiting for me to activate, and because it's an activated ability, it's a little bit more difficult to stop from resolving too. So, but other spell ones are, I mean, your kind of go-to Wheel of Fortune, right? Also Wheel of Misfortune, Windfall, Reforge the Soul, and Whispering Madness. And Whispering Madness has Cipher, so it can get some reuse if I manage to connect with whichever creature it's ciphered on. And then finally, Memory Jar, because another thing that helps play into having the right permanent types in my graveyard, because it sacrifices itself to do essentially a mini wheel effect. Also potential there for if I have Memory Jar in play and I play another wheel spell, I can use it to save my current hand by exiling that temporarily and then doing the rest of the wheel effects afterward. So,
you know, one thing I'll jump in here. I was just going to say you mentioned you don't run a lot in terms of protection, but in a lot of ways your wheels are disruption.
True.
So you're potentially, you know, taking cards out of their hand, planning on using or are prepared to use against you, and making them have to reassess and constantly be on the back foot, and they can't have any real concrete plans going forward because they know they're going to lose whatever they.
For sure, and it's very risky to tutor things, actually, too.
Yeah.
When you think about it, because it's risky to do your, you know, demonic tutors and whatnot because it's probably going away, or there's a good chance it is anyway. So, piloting this monster. I guess one thing I have to try and keep in mind is I can't get too attached to my hands. Not my physical hands, my, you know, cards in hand. But I just can't get too attached because, you know, I need to remind myself that I'm usually going to be benefiting more from the wheel effects than my opponents. So sometimes it's a matter of doing what's best in the moment with what I've got and adapting accordingly depending on what I draw into. And hopefully I'm more prepared for it than my opponents. Some weaknesses and challenges. I mean, graveyard hate and effects that will limit my card draw in one way or another. So your rest in pieces. No, I mean, I think I've mentioned these in a few other deck techs we've done. These cards just suck to play against no matter what, especially Narset. God. So, yeah, but hopefully I have enough ways to ping that's gonna help her go down quick. And it's sometimes a little tricky balancing saving wheel spells until I have my engines in play that can benefit from the discarding and drawing. So sometimes tricky to get those out first and then follow up with a wheel. But yeah, that is Sauron. That is one wheel to rule them all.
I still think Simic's more evil.
You know, I'm not gonna argue with you. It's yeah, Simic.
We're gonna find out one
Training
way or
wheels.
another in our live stream here. I'm looking forward to seeing these decks face off.
Yep. Check it out later on. Tune in and have a good time.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe.
Yep. Like and subscribe.